Kate is a therapist by training and by practice. She's a feminist, she's a scholar, she's a teacher, she leads workshops, and as Michael told you, she and her husband, Steve Costa, co-own the Point Reyes bookstore just up the road. And as you read the book and as we listen to Kate talk, I think you'll see how each of the different roles that you have in life, as well as your own life experience, some of which is here and some of which I'm going to ask you to talk about a little bit more, all blend together into creating what is such an exceptional work here for helping us to understand women and money and our emotional reactions to money, our ways of communicating about money, how we hold money in our lives. So without saying too much more about that, I'd like to give you the floor to talk a bit about your own journey, how you came to this particular work, this theme, and a little bit too about since you've completed this, I know you've had a lot more insight because of workshops that you've done, because of the kinds of responses you've gotten from people. So let you talk to us a little bit about that, and then we'll have a bit of a dialogue and then open it up for everyone for conversation and for questions and answers. So, over to you.
So I want to thank you, Susan, and thank Kira and Michael so much for inviting me and for offering such rich programs as they do through the new school. I've been able to attend some of the lectures, and they've been very wonderful. I always feel some anxiety when I start to talk about money because it's an enormous topic, and though my heart is very full being here at Commonweal, and I hope to present some sense of what my work is, I can never feel like I can do a complete job. Some of that is because when you look at money from an emotional, psychological view, symbolic view, it's huge, right? You can't put your arms around it completely. It's not like looking at a budget sheet or an Excel spreadsheet or the bottom line. It's not concrete. It's not external. So each of us has a completely unique relationship to money based on our experiences and our psychology and probably what we're born with, right? Because little kids we know have very different relationships to the money in their lives, you know, when they're playing Monopoly or how they keep the money in the piggy bank, or they want to spend all the money as soon as they get it. So there's so many influences and there's such a range of experience. You know, I did a workshop, and as I look out in the audience, I so wish that we could be telling each other stories. Not only because I wouldn't have to be trying to come up with the right words, but also because the richness of the stories. I did a workshop yesterday, and I'm just always astounded when I get to sit with 10 other women and what we end up talking about. It was incredibly wonderful. So I'm going to do my best to convey some of that. And I wrote the book because my unconscious led me to the topic of women and money for my dissertation. I wrote about women with inherited wealth, the experience of inheriting, and why they chose to work, women who didn't have a need for earned income. And actually, it was interesting when I spoke a few weeks ago at an event, and I told that story, and then I also told about a passage I'm going to read about my mother having a sizable inheritance. I got the feedback from a lot of people in the audience that they assumed that I had inherited a great deal of wealth. And I think that's a good teaching about how we relate to money. We relate a lot with projection, right? We don't really know how much people have. But with just a little bit of information, we assume, we make calculations. And we generally know about money through projection and through comparison. How much I have versus how much it appears someone else has. And this work, Emotional Currency, the book and the way I approach money, is really, it has nothing to do with how much anyone else has. It has to do with our inner relationship to money. And that we locate ourselves from internally instead of externally. We're used to looking at money as something concrete and external to ourselves. And this is, I think, a missing approach to money. That, we need the financial approach, but we also need an approach that has to do with the meaning that money holds for us. So I wrote the dissertation, and I want to say here that in Michael's introduction, he said something that we were really good organizers. And my husband is a really good organizer. And I am not an organized person. So I thought of that as you were introducing me. I'm going to jump around because I just, whatever comes to mind is, what comes out. So I wrote the dissertation and I went to talk about my findings. And I realized that the emperor had no clothes, that I had not looked at money in my own life at all. In my analysis, I had never talked about money. In my years of training and education, money is not something that the field of psychology is interested in. I had never noticed that this was missing in my education. So I approached money through writing personal essays about money in my life, through meeting with 2 other women, forming a small group and talking about money, and going back to therapy. And from the therapy, I found that approaching money isn't a linear thing. It's not like, okay, now I'm going to understand money. That it comes through the stories. It's a circuitous route to understand what money holds for us and means to us. And it's very much stories. And so from that work, I started doing emotional currency workshops, offering these workshops. And the stories from the women, as I said, were so compelling that over the course of many years, I worked on the book. I guess one important teaching is how much we avoid it in our lives. That there's a taboo about talking about it, which is huge. I think it has probably the largest impact of anything. We don't get to talk, especially for women, we don't get to talk with our friends about it and kind of find out what keeps us up in the middle of the night, or what it was about an interaction or an exchange that is disturbing to us. We don't get to think and talk it out. We don't get to hear from our friends or others about how they deal about money. And we don't get help in finding solutions to the problems or dilemmas that we're facing. So I think the taboo, it's such a relief when we can sit together and talk about money in a safe setting, because we have a lot to say to one another. I think there are forces just against us looking at it. In the family, certainly, most families, in most families, we're taught that it's not a proper thing to talk about. And then it's striking, isn't it, that we don't have financial education. We have sex ed in high school, but we don't have the basic education about finance in high school or college. And so I think that it says something about the collective unconscious in this culture and the benefit of keeping money external and impersonal, and that there's some benefit to I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I think there is there are many forces that keep it externalized. And that that this work, though it's hard to look at our intimate and personal relationship to money, I think has the potential to change all of our lives. I mean, I see it with the people I work with. I know it in myself, and I think it's important work to do. Certainly our culture needs help in terms of money. We know that there's lots of, money has the potential to be both destructive and evil, and also life-giving and nurturing. And so I think that when we can look at our own thoughts to money and understand it individually, perhaps the collective face of money can change. That's my hope. And it requires holding both the light and the dark, right? Holding the shadow and the positive, nurturing, life-giving forces of money. And we all have stories of, both of pain and of creativity or success. I think holding both is a part of the approach. Being curious about it rather than just judgmental or we have a lot of self-judgment, a lot of shame about having too much, shame about having too little, shame of how we use money, but kind of transcending that, feeling the shame, experiencing the shame, but also being curious about how do I relate to this thing that I hold every day, that I use all the time, that I touch, but what does it really mean to me? How is it really working inside of me? I'm just going to read. I think we have time for my reading of a story.
I'd love for you to. In fact, I wanted to just say that when I first started to read the book, and Kate has a lot of really good exercises in this for you to approach what your own experiences with money, what your own emotions are. And I started reading it, and I was on an airplane, and I thought, I'm fine about money. I don't have any stuff around money. And then I started reading it. I was like, oh, well, there's that. Well, okay. Oh, but then, it's very eye-opening. So for those of you who think you don't have stuff around money, take a look at this and see what you think after you read it.
Well, I certainly fell into that category before I started looking too.
It's real eye-opening.
And I think it's a good time to say that I wrote the book with women in mind, and I think I'm big on women becoming more engaged in their money lives and becoming empowered. But the book is also working for men. I've gotten lots of good feedback that way. So women have a particular history of alienation, and it's radically new for us to be having money and being in control of our money.